And the Spurs won't foul. It's now 12 consecutive wins for the Knicks as they take game one of the NBA Finals.
The New York Knicks versus the San Antonio Spurs. The game one has ended and the Knicks come out on top. This is Full Court Unscripted. So Jalen Brunson and the Knicks have defeated the Spurs 105-95. Jalen Brunson with 30 points and 13 points in the fourth quarter. Insane. He was getting every shot that he wanted, and he took what the defense gave them. And unfortunately, I can get into the specifics on how they did that later in this video. Now, Victor Wembanyama, 26 points, 12 rebounds, and 3 blocks. 12 rebounds and 3 blocks. Now, Jalen Brunson and Victor Wembanyama did not shoot well. Both were being guarded by both teams very well. It was a battle against the Knicks team versus the Spurs team, in my opinion. So Knicks come out on top, still game one, and get home court advantage. The biggest reason why the Knicks won in game one is the second chance points. Off of rebounds, they kept the Knicks in the game as San Antonio Spurs were up by 10 to 14 points throughout most of the time. However, those second chance points, 23 for the Knicks and only 14 points for the San Antonio Spurs. Look, let's not, based off of that, right? There obviously has to be an adjustment. All the San Antonio Spurs shots after the second point shots, they just weren't falling. They were not going in. And I think that just completely weren't in the San Antonio Spurs' favor. However, there is a reason why those threes that they were chunking were not well shot as well. So I'm going to go over that as well. But basically, the Jalen Brunson 8-0 run in the fourth quarter as contributed so much more to the Spurs being taken down in game one. They figured out a way to box out Wemby just like OKC did, so that way he is not the help defender. You got Mitchell Robinson, you got Karl Anthony Towns, their weight just battling in the paint the entire time, weighs on Wemby. He's out of the paint. And I know we have talented guards, or the Spurs has talented guards, but they're just not enough to get as many rebounds, which is kind of crazy because Josh Hart got 15 rebounds. So it's like there is a way to get the rebounds. It's just I feel like the San Antonio Spurs were not being very attentive to the rebounds. But at the end of the day, the Spurs did beat the Knicks in total rebounding. So again, the second chance points in that 8-0 run from Jalen Brunson really did take the cake in the game of the first one. Now, did game one prove that the Spurs aren't ready for a championship yet? Well, it's just game one. And I know there's a lot of Knicks fans saying it's going to be over in 4 games. Okay. Timberwolves beat Spurs in game one. They came out on top in 6 games. The thing is, you don't know what to expect. The refs are out of this game. It's a fair game. I'm sure there's 1 or 2 misses on both sides that were missed. But at the end of the day, it's not OKC with the refs versus a team. So I think this can go either way. I think what we witnessed last night was both teams could have got the win, and it was one player that got them the win, which was that 8-0 Jalen Brunson run. But again, that second chance points, if the Spurs made a few more threes, that would be great. However, that goes into my next point. What adjustments do the Spurs make in game two? Well, first of all, Wemby needs to be in the paint more. They need to figure out a way where Wemby can get inside the paint to continue to get fouled, to continue to slam dunk, do layups, do something inside the paint. So that way it opens the doors for the shooters all the way around to be open for these threes. Because in this game one that we just saw, there was a lot of, let me just take this three because we can't go into the paint. So the paint needs to be attacked more. So that way the defense is honest on the three. Now, that goes into my other thing is with the Spurs shooting 25% on this game, I think the Spurs wins every game if they're above 35% or more on the three. Again, if game 2 happens and they shoot 35% or more, that means they did an adjustment. Okay, there's not one player who's on fire. Now, that could also be the case. However, this is the NBA Finals. Mainly guys get a little scared. Of course, you didn't see that on Jalen Brunson. He took everything to face value and he delivered. So props to him. Again, I am a Spurs fan. So me giving props is because I know when players can hoop and when they're just foul baiting all the time or they don't deserve the praise. I think Jalen Brunson did a very good job. Now, that comes to our second player to talk about mainly is De'Aaron Fox, getting paid $50 million, and he only scored 7 points. 3 of 13 from the field. I don't understand what's going on. He averaged 27 points per game in the Sacramento versus the Warriors back then. And then in the first series of the Spurs versus Portland, he averaged 20 points per game. Okay, perfect. That's perfect because that is reasonable considering that Victor Wembanyama is the first option. But second round, Timberwolves, he dropped his points per game to 17. And then in OKC, he dropped his points per game to 11. And now he shot 7 points in this final round, the final round that counts for everything. He's getting paid most of the money. And Dylan Harper, a point guard who is a rookie, is scoring out of his mind and only played 3 minutes in the fourth quarter when I think Mitch Johnson should have made a switch at that moment. And I know it's scary. But if De'Aaron Fox is 3 of 13 and throughout this entire playoffs, you just see him not progress, but the opposite. What do you have to lose if you have a rookie scoring whenever he wants in the paint? This is inside the paint, and he can make you honest on defense by shooting a 3. I just think that's what should be addressed inside the locker room. I know Victor Wembanyama took some blame. However, I think Victor Wembanyama did everything he can despite the defense doing I expect them to do against Victor Wembanyama, but he still had 26 points. He still got hacked. He still made sure he got fouled. De'Aaron Fox had 7 points. He didn't even try to get a foul. Now, who wins this series right now? Look, if Spurs can make an adjustment, I think Knicks for sure are going to win the NBA Finals in 6 games. However, if it's anything like the OKC series, because they were doing the same thing to the Spurs, then I think Spurs will win in 6 or 7 games if the Spurs make adjustments to this Victor Wembanyama inside the paint problem, and De'Aaron Fox needs to be that secondary scorer to drive in the paint or replace him with Dylan Harper. Because when you have Dylan Harper, Stephon Castle, and Victor Wembanyama, all 3 going inside the paint, who's going to protect the 3? You're going to have help defense come towards them, leaving an open man, Julian Champagnie, Devin Vassell. And then you got Dylan Harper, Stephon Castle, and Victor Wembanyama. If they're outside on the 3, they're going to make the 3. So it's definitely all up in the air still. It was a great game. Everyone loved it. But who do y'all got? I still have Spurs in 6. I'm very hopeful, if not Spurs in 7. But is the Spurs winning this series? What are y'all predicting? Is the New York Knicks going to bring it home? Is it a sweep? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching.